Most leaders don't realize how much misalignment in their culture is slowing them down. And you see those artificial walls, and they do say, don't they, that cultural misalignment, it whispers before it shouts. So my aunt, who lives in San Francisco, told me about this, and I have to mention it. This is around stay interviews. So in her organization, they started having stay interviews to tackle this quiet quitting. Like, say, for example, we were talking and you were my line manager. You would be asking me, Nisha, what would it take for you to stay within this organization and not leave? What would it make you feel like to be completely valued here? I don't feel like it's possible to go and wholesale change a culture. No way. It's so rich. This is a quote I was telling you about before I came on here. It's from this guy called David Hannemeyer Hansen. He's a Danish entrepreneur. And he says, instant cultures are artificial cultures. They're big bangs made of mission statements, declarations, and rules. They are obvious, ugly, and plastic. An artificial culture is paint. A real culture is patina. How beautiful is that, honey? How beautiful is that?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the yet another episode of the Agile State of Mind podcast. And as you see, I have with me Nisha. Hello. So Nisha Joshi is a leadership coach and delivery consultant with over 20 years of experience. I don't know where those 20 years, I don't believe it. You look younger than me. I have 10 years of experience, okay? So I think that can be true.
That's probably the nicest thing someone has said to me, Maria.
Oh,
thank you.
I love it. And Nisha is empowering executives and teams to shape culture and lead change and deliver lasting results. And on top of that, Nisha also hosts a podcast, the Delivery Space podcast. You probably saw it. There will be links in the description, so please check it out. We started this podcast together because I wanted to talk to you about culture, and that's apparently the topic you're very passionate about. And I'm thinking, is it a good time to talk about culture? You know, because what I'm seeing with all this today I learned, I was reading through LinkedIn and somebody said, stop saying psychological safety, you know? And I'm like, really? And then we have the PMI merge with Agile, and then we have the Agile identity crisis and all that crisis. And it seems like people are fed up with what I call sometimes like this happy flower hippie that sometimes Agile is considered, right? And I would like to ask you, how is this topic relevant? Because you are so passionate about it. Why now?
It's such a good question. It's relevant because most leaders don't realize how much misalignment in their culture is slowing them down.
Okay.
So if you strip away the frameworks, if you strip away the things that we are sold by consultants that we think that we should be doing, or some misguided way of implementing Agile by someone who thinks it's just about team happiness, hence the whole hippie culture label that you've given it, right? Take that away. Our leaders and people who we look up to and people who kind of set the tone in our organizations, right? For how we want to work together, how we want to collaborate, and what we want to go and work towards, they still want to deliver stuff. They still have board members to try and make happy, but they themselves want to achieve good things, often for their customers, for themselves, and for their teams. But then when they have that misalignment, cultural misalignment, that slows them down. And that wall, when they hit that wall, it looks like disengaged teams that are not really regular in their attendance, staff attrition that starts slowly trickling through the system, and then strategies as well that don't stick. So what I do is I run a hands-on session that helps leaders spot where their culture is out of sync with their goals. And then I give them tools to fix that, so that they have those tools on a perpetual basis. I just ran this exercise with a FinTech at the end of last year, and I'd love to tell you more about it. But I do think if you strip everything back, culture is something that we can make more tangible. We can measure the right things, but both qualitative and quantitative, and make sure that we've got the right focus on the right things so that we still want to be able to do the work. We still want the discipline and rigor with something like that Agile requires, that Lean requires, that all those good Lean principles require. But then that also links up with a vision, that also links with a strategy, that also links up with the people focus and people measurement. Yeah, that's what I'm about, like identifying what those connections are and where they're broken. Where we're saying that, for example, we want to adopt a product mindset in the organization. That's what we want to do. But the people side of the business is not keeping up. Then what happens? Are we hiring the right people? Is it worth having a conversation with the people management side of the business to figure out what we can do to get the right talent in, to get the right mindset in, to get the right education pieces in, to get the right rewards in? So it's understanding which bits are misaligned. And now is a good time for that, I feel.
Okay. It makes a lot of sense. And especially if you talk about like stripping down everything. So I imagine it's not about agile or lean or doing scrum. It's not about everything that we associate so much with agile. It's just about the culture. And also when I think about it, today we work with so many people all around the globe, right? It's like even myself, I'm from Poland. I was born and raised in Poland, I live in Spain, but I work with Portuguese and Americans. And how many times have I seen this misalignment? Like we talk the same thing, but somehow everybody understands it differently.
Yes.
Or, all those things that happen and you think, I don't think we are all aligned, even though we had this meeting and the words were spoken. It just doesn't feel like alignment. So could you explain a little bit? Because I was wondering, you are this coach and you coach leadership. How does that look like? And you just mentioned you have an example from a FinTech company. Could you share a little bit, like what does it look like in a day? What happens?
Yes, this was so good. It was so juicy. I think if you were there, knowing you now, Maria, you'd probably really love it. So there were like 7 global locations for this FinTech, and we got people together and we mixed the people across the different locations. I was embraced with open arms by the CEO. Basically, the story behind the FinTech is they are on an expansive growth cycle. And they've grown so much over the past few years that they know that they need to now look back and look at their people and look at their culture and say, right, how can we become aligned so we are ready for even more growth that is coming our way, even more, like they've got their eye on mergers, they've got their eye on acquisitions, for example. And so those culture is fundamental to those, because if you're speaking to someone that's a CEO and also a founding member, they've injected so much of themselves into that company, and they've seen that ethos do really, really well. But now they're looking back and now they want to take feedback from their people. So I was received with arms open wide to say, okay, I want to know what my people think. And yes, we've sent out all the quantitative stuff in terms of, and gathered the quantitative data in terms of the employee engagement surveys and feedback from those. And we're looking at that. But I want my people's voices to come out. And so we got people together across 7 locations, and there were different cultures, different nationalities, different ways of working. And we united them to start off with stories. And so one of the things that we did was we had this sponge exercise right at the beginning. And that sponge exercise, when they came into the workshops, were to talk about a story that sticks with them around organizational culture and how they first experienced it. And let me tell you, Maria, for every single workshop, it was hard to get them out of those online meeting rooms afterwards because they had so much to talk about. I experienced this. This was my first experience. I had this. Oh, I didn't really like this, but then it turned for me. And so many stories like that came out. There was a sociability about those workshops that we did, which brought people together, and it got people thinking so much more about what they were doing at work on their day-to-day basis, how they were articulating, how they would like to be collaborated with across the time zones, across different cultures, for example. It allowed them to come together and get creative about how they were going to do it. So that was really nice. And to answer your question, it is to bring as much sociability as you can, because I've seen that work with people across different cultures. And knowing you're quite a bubbly and like person to bring people together, because you do that for your role, right? So yeah, that is what that misunderstanding or potential for misunderstanding in language or ways in which you're expressing yourself, like you said, where we all aligned, I don't know. Because you have that sociability that you created then with people can say straight away out loud, Maria, do you know what? I don't think I understood that well. Can we see if we're on the same page? This is what I think. Do you know what? So you can have that dialogue. Can we just have a chat? Because I don't think I got it. And because you've got that sociability, you've created that safety.
Psychological safety that we shouldn't talk about anymore.
No,
yeah.
We should totally talk about it. Yes.
I agree. And I agree with you. And I actually call the role that I do a glue role, because I consider it like brings people together and integrates them. And this is like really the most important characteristic, I would say, of the role that we are having, right? Because you can call it whatever you want. You can be a scrum master or an agile coach or a delivery coach or TPM or whatever.
It's an RTE even.
Oh, yes.
Even an RTE, you can do
RT
this.
is a glue role. It's a huge in that part. Yeah. And I agree with you. And sometimes even if you don't have that psychological safety yet, at least having this meeting and being aware and seeing like, I think words are spoken, but I don't think we are on the same page. And then what I do usually is like, I go to this one person, talk to them about it. I understand they are in a different place than where the other person I spoke just a few minutes ago, one-on-one, not in a group. And then I'm like, okay, so back again, we need to do this again, and we need to clarify this and this and this point. And you know what? Sometimes what happens is that, this people start asking questions.
Yes.
And when they start asking questions, it's like, oh my God, they are not afraid to admit they don't know. Yeah. They just needed to be educated about this new initiative. They had no idea. Yeah. They didn't know the technical aspects. And that's why I think this psychological safety is so important. And I'm very glad that you do this work. And I understand that based on everything that you did, you created training.
Yeah. Yeah.
And could you speak a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the training works on, and it's not even really training, it's a set of like hands-on exercises that work on the basis of a case study. So we present a case study. We first talk about cultural stories that bring us together to break the ice and do something that means something. So we'll talk about that in it's not even training, I guess a set of hands-on exercises. And then we have a case study, and from that case study, we then start pulling out those misalignments and those cultural misalignments, putting ourselves in the position of those characters in that case study. So pulling
it's
out...
like a play, like a theater.
Kind of, yes. So it's kind of, and we get to play with those characters. And what we get to do is look at all the levers that there are in that case study and in that little organization that we've created. So it could be strategy, it could be process, it could be like behavioral norms and things like that they have. And then that case study brings them out. So the attendees will draw those out and say, okay, these are the levers. And then what are those disconnects that they see between those levers? So one example could be, we've got our vision, we've got our strategy, and then we've got the delivery part as part of our processes. But you know what? Every team that's delivering over the past few sprints has had hippo requests that make that sprint a last minute scramble, disconnect. So like if you can imagine, they will end up with a network of like red lines between all these aspects, all these levers of their culture and the sub aspects within those levers that will be broken. And when they're broken, then they can start discussing, and the workshops take them through that, a good way and a nice way of actually discussing and boiling it down to action. The root of all of this is all still based in agility. I'm never going to get away from that. And I will proudly say I will never get away from that, because I've learned so much from my practice of Agile, is they will learn to prioritize their culture change backlog, and then people, and how to talk about it. And then their people will see that they're going to do something about it. So that's how we want to show that, hey, you know what, you can make change and you can use culture as a tool. You know, you get these things around, cultural transformation. There was I am always so skeptic. I don't know how you feel about that, Maria, but I don't feel like it's possible to go and wholesale change a culture. No way. Like, it's so rich. This is a quote I was telling you about before I came on here, right? I have to tell you this, and I think you'll love it. I'm going to read it out so I don't mess it up, but it's from this guy called David Hannemeyer Hansen. He's a Danish entrepreneur, and he says, instant cultures are artificial cultures. They're big bangs made of mission statements, declarations, and rules. They are obvious, ugly, and plastic. An artificial culture is paint. A real culture is patina. How beautiful is that, honey? How beautiful is that? And you see those artificial walls, and they do say, don't they, that cultural misalignment, it whispers before it shouts.
You know what it reminds me of, especially the paint part, is like when, Poland, it used to be in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And whenever you had like somebody important from the party, that was one party coming, they actually painted like the lawn green. There was one street that was supposed to look well. So you will see, like, still in the small towns, there was one street that was like cared for. They were painting like everything, like the parts of the pavement like should be white, and then the glass should be green. It's like, yeah, we are great, we just painted the picture for you, here you go.
That is so nice. And so is that a custom?
It used to be. We stopped being in Soviet Union, but that showed how very artificial and very only on, it wasn't deep, like people had to show they are in accordance with what the party wanted and how it should be. You just show it, it's one day, everything's perfect, and then there is a parade, and then it's gone.
I misunderstood. Okay, I get it.
So it's just, for this moment that they come and they see, okay, it's like we wanted it to be. Bye.
That's the artificial sense. When you first described it, I was like, that's actually a nice little custom, but I understand now the historical significance of it. Yeah, we're just doing this to please you, but we don't really mean it.
Because we consider you want this from us. And how many times we see that in the companies, right? We become what sometimes people say, like, you are creating your employees because they are learning how you are, what you need. And even though I don't agree, I don't like that I'm just sending more and more reports and I never talk to people and I don't even know what really the state of the art is, but you want reports from me, so I will deliver. And we will become this very artificial company where we only speak in statuses and like throw Jira issues at each other,
Right. And what you just said there is really, I really identify with that. I've been in teams, and when I was a younger and a junior Scrum Master, I say younger and junior because that's true. I was younger, I was a lot junior, I didn't have that much experience, and I used to wonder why, like, my developers and testers in our team weren't talking to each other. Like, all developers would finish a task, and that would be it. And like testers were like, oh, I didn't know it was ready. When are we going to do some volleyballing? When are we going to do some pairing on it so I can see what you built? Oh, no, it's there. I've done it. Go take a look, test it. So you see like a build up and a build up and a build up of those things. And then it then manifests, like you said, if you're just sending reports with those watermelon statuses, right? And either it's red or it's green. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do to mitigate any risks that there are. And then it gets talked about at the leadership level, but you don't really see what's actually going on underneath until you get that big shout that says, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to deliver your strategy, or we're not going to deliver something that really matters to your customer. And we can't really tell you why. And that's the big shout that then comes. But before that, I love what you said. Yeah, there are those silent things that happen.
I love that quote. I just marked it. The whispers before it screams. And that's so true. And that's the question to you from my side, because, okay, we might understand even how important the culture is, but what are the signs that you could say from your experience that tell you that those are the whispers? You should be listening to the whispers. What would you say are those signs that something is not right? We should pay attention.
What I've seen and from my experience are teams disengaging. There's silos in communication. So like in our context that we work in, for example, if you're working with a brand design agency to deliver something, to deliver a new branded website, but your third-party developer, your in-house developers don't talk to them. You've got siloed communication. You're not talking to marketing. We are not talking to sales, and they're part of your value chain. You've not got like a team feel. So that proper cross-functional team is not there, and you're not supported by leaders. So you might have a strategy. So that's another sign. You might have a strategy to deliver, and you've got nods around the table. Leadership say, yeah, we'll do this. Yeah, we'll do this. But you don't really get backing for those decisions that are made at the table. Leaders have their own sort of agendas, and then the teams work to those agendas, again, causing those breaks, those misalignments. And then the other thing I've also experienced, which is around, the collaboration isn't really made to come to life by leaders. So what I mean by that is they don't encourage that cross-functional collaboration because they're either so busy in their own areas or working towards something in their own areas that they don't communicate and say, this is my priority here. I'm not going to be able to collaborate with this other team by this time. So they're breaking links when it comes to collaboration. And then the other thing is decision making. I'm sure we've all experienced those things where we go into a meeting, but that those decisions are actually made outside of the meeting before you're even in that meeting. And so there are silo channels of communication that happen. And we know that we can use things when we know that things like that are happening. We can use shadow voting. We can use some liberating structures. We can use those things to come to as agilists, because a lot of us have developed ourselves to think about all these other practices that we can use. We can apply these once we know that these signals are there. And the other one is, and this one, it gets my goat, but I can understand where people come from. That's another British saying, it gets my goat, Maria, and I'll tell you about that.
Thank you so much for explaining.
It really annoys me, this one. That's what it means. It really annoys me. It's like that feeling of not my responsibility. And when people say it's not my responsibility, and I say it annoys me mainly because of myself, because when I hear that, underneath that are other things that you need to, and I haven't been so good at before. That's why I say it annoys me, not because someone said it, but it's because in the past, I've never been very, very good at delving deeper, and experiences taught me to do that. When someone says not my responsibility, are they overworked on something else? Are they being stretched on something else? Have they had negative experiences? So like empathy plays a massive role. But yeah, those are the signs that I would start like looking for actively. And your employee engagement surveys are not going to tell you that.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I will come back to it, but I just
Mm.
wanted to. I really like what you mentioned. I noted them. There were like 4 points, and I really recognize them. How easily it can be spotted. You
Yeah.
don't need really to have this big issue. Those things, especially the silos and the disengagement and collaboration, broken links, all those things speak to me totally. And the part of responsibility is when I think it's also like going back to this mentality of project management and a plan.
Hmm.
And when you feel really that whatever I do, I don't really have much to say. It has been decided. It's not on
Right.
me. It's above my paycheck. That's also another one, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, so let's just do it, even though, and then you see, those when there is some safety because people there's no leader present, or you can see people like, what, we are doing this terrible thing, it doesn't make sense, and then you are like, oh my god, we are like compliant to it, we know it's not great, and we still do it because we know it's expected. And who will go and say, I don't believe we are doing the right thing? Like, people are sometimes just too tired. And I wanted to ask, given all that you said, is
Mm.
do you feel that now it's a bit more tricky? And I'm asking that because we have heard so much about the layoffs,
Mm.
and there was, I think it was 23 and 22 that there were so many. And then I think 23 was like full of layoffs. Then there were some but even yesterday I read about Salesforce, like cutting thousands jobs. So
Yeah.
it's still there. And now people in tech, we were super comfortable, right? It was the best place to work. you
Yeah.
could you had all those privileges and all those bonuses and great pay and everything, and now you feel like, so what I'm saying is, okay, if I leave on my own, I cannot get fired. Okay, I'm not maybe afraid I'm getting fired, but if I leave on my own and go to another place and there will be layoffs, who knows, I will
Mm.
be first in line, right? Because it's so should I take that? So I don't like where I am, but I'm afraid to leave. So we used to like, oh, I don't buy into this strategy. I don't like what they do. I will just leave and find another place. And it was
Mm.
great. And now people are like, maybe I should just be more cautious. Maybe I shouldn't stand out so much. And I'm a bit worried that this is just making the problems even bigger because people are really doing this like very whisper so low now that you cannot hear them.
Oh, you're worried about their voice actually coming at actually being heard and the
No,
danger of that.
I'm worried about people just getting like quiet quitting.
Yeah, I
But
hear that. Yeah.
like, I don't like where I am, but I will not change, and I will not change anything because I'm afraid they will like lay me off if I start being the one that's rebellious. Why do I
Mm.
need this person? So I'm
Mm.
there, I'm unhappy, and I don't do anything about it because I'm afraid to leave. And I
Mm.
didn't used to be afraid. I was like, I can leave any moment and I can tell that I'm unhappy and it will be okay. And now I'm like, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I just, keep
Yeah.
quiet and get the paycheck and that's it. That's what I'm afraid. This like nobody does anything anymore about it.
Yeah. That's why you need this.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you do need to talk about these cultural misalignments because I can't remember now, Maria, but there's a stat around that quiet quitting. It happened a couple of
Mm-hmm.
Januaries ago, and there's a research body that released a huge stat around disengagement of people. And it's sad that people do feel like this. And I understand why they feel like this. No one's advocating to stay around in a toxic environment. If you're in a toxic environment and it's ruining your, like, it's draining your spirit every single day, you're going through the same thing and you really don't want to be there, then look for other opportunities. Or if you can afford to, jack it in. I would never
Mm.
advocate staying in a toxic environment. But in terms of that quiet quitting, there is that thing like, I love this. So my aunt who lives in San Francisco told me about this and I have to mention it. This is around stay interviews. So in her organization, they started having stay interviews to tackle this quiet quitting. Like, say, for example, we were talking and you were my line manager, you would be asking me, Nisha, what would it take for you to stay within this organization and not leave? What would it make you feel like to be completely valued here? And what would make you feel like you're indifferent and you're updating your LinkedIn profile basically on the quiet because, you've got one foot out of the door. And that made a difference because then people felt like they were being seen, like they were being heard. And that's the root of a lot of this quiet quitting. Either toxic environments that are allowed to spin out of control for whatever reason, but also environments where people aren't asked. Like if you open up and ask someone and say something like, what would make you feel really valued in this organization? It makes a massive difference.
Such a simple solution,
Simple
right?
thing. Simple
Yeah,
thing.
and we only care about those exit interviews that nobody cares. Like, why would you do them?
Yeah, you and I were talking about the employee engagement surveys right at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
This is exactly like that. That exit interview is so late. And what are
Yeah.
you really going to get from someone? Like, do you really want to wait until someone does a hatchet job on you on Glassdoor?
Exactly. Why?
Yeah.
And then, now you reminded me that what I wanted to ask after you mentioned all those misalignments, and you mentioned that NPS and the engagement survey, and I'm like, yeah, but then we become this prisoners of the number. Suddenly the number is what's ruling the company, right?
Yeah.
And where you get to, we had this moment once that we got to like 8.6 engagement, like the NPS for the role. And we are like, that's bad. How can we even keep improving? Like, it's very hard to get past like 8.6. It will only go down. And what?
Yeah.
That will be a problem now? Yeah. So it's like you're not happy with being up because then you can only go down. And what will you tell? Like, oh, we are bad. We are worse. We are really good.
Yeah.
But so
that's something to celebrate, Maria.
Exactly. But if you do it like constantly and people are like, you just asked me like 3 months ago, do I have another survey already? Why are we like this becomes so robotic? Like, oh,
Yeah.
AI is calling me, and like this bot, this Jira bot. So yeah. The time is running so quickly.
Okay.
I have like 2 questions still. So we talked about those misalignments at the beginning. And you mentioned where you were explaining how that goes and how the workshop goes with this cultural engagement. What would be like an action or something like that we, like, okay, what are the next steps? Because it's great to have the workshop. Everybody's engaged and everybody's like, yeah, this is great. I want to keep talking. And how do you keep this wave? What would be the typical actions that are taken from this?
I love this. So there is no need in what I'm describing to create and spin up an extra team and an extra bunch of people. You don't need culture experts because the existing roles in your business should be able to handle this. You've got L&D people, you've got HR, people management.
What's L&D, just for people?
Learning and development. So if you've got learning and development, if you've got people management and head of people, HR, if C-suite leaders, so CTOs, CIOs, CEOs, head of departments. Now at the C level, you're going to want to know that these things just happen because you're going to be time poor. But there is no reason why you can't dip into what happens afterwards. And what I'm suggesting happens after those workshops is I can either come and help your teams do these workshops internally, or you can carry out these workshops yourselves. Because in the case study exercise that we will run, and I'm loosely saying the training because it's not even really training, it's equipping people with the practical tools that they need. They can do these things themselves. And once they've had those workshops, they've got a change backlog that they can start prioritizing. So within the group of people, they can suggest themselves who are culture champions within their organization that will nurture that backlog on an ongoing basis, pick when they want to have those conversations, prioritize them with their people that they need to prioritize them with in the organization, and then see things happen. So it's culture initiatives that are run by the people for the people of the organization, with obviously the blessings of the leaders who are always kept in touch with what is happening. And they can come in and inspire their people. I'll give you an example. So at this FinTech, right, one of the things that came out when we did the culture campus is, actually, I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the things that came out was town hall. We haven't had a town hall. We haven't heard from senior management in a while because we've been so busy doing the work to grow. And one of the other culture champions in the sessions piped up and said, why don't we organize the town hall and invite senior management along? And that was taken up as one of the initiatives. Do you see how it works? You get the ownership, you get the inspiration, and you get the buy-in from each other because you've created that safety, you created that sociability. Another example, like, what was it like when you were first a manager? Maria, can you remember your first role as a manager? Were you given any mentoring? Were you given any sort of development for that role?
Yeah, that's the strangest part. Such an important role, and you get like nothing. I remember I was like, there's this person from HR, there's this page by,
Right. That's exactly what happened here. And people were given minimal mentorship, and they were like, I'm a manager now, but I'm not sure how I need to collaborate with my team. By the way, I'm really close friends with people in my team. How do I interact with them now that I'm their manager? How do I pull someone up on poor performance without making them feel discouraged? How do I do this? How do I have these conversations? This was one of the things that came out. And what we then developed, again, it was one of the suggestions from one of the culture champions who came. Why don't we have a buddying system for managers who have been there in better positions, not in better positions, but have been in there in senior positions, to be able to buddy those that are coming up into that role as manager. Such a great idea.
Right. And again, such a simple idea.
Such a simple idea, but they come up with it themselves. Like, I'm there as a facilitator creating that space. When I need to, I'll inspire them and talk to them about my own stories. But most of what ended up in their change backlog was from them. So I'm trying to create very slowly, either business function by business function or organization by organization, a way in which people can map out those sort of ingrained systemic blockages that you and I will experience in our teams, but the root of them is in the wider system and in those behaviors that are like perpetuated or are blocking us over time. That's what I'm trying to do.
Nice. I fully support it. I'm so happy you dedicated to it and you feel super passionate about it. So it's great because only with passion we can really make a change stick, I think. And so the training that you're preparing, we will be finishing, but I would like to understand, is it more like a workshop that you go to a company? Or like, can people have it online? Is it like, do you explain it and people can just do it themselves? Or how is that?
Oh, I love this. So I'm planning a webinar and that webinar will go out on LinkedIn. So there'll be a LinkedIn Live, there'll be a webinar, which will give a snippet of and a good idea of what the course is and what people can expect. So that will be a chance to sign up. It will be a fully online 3-hour session, 3-hour workshop, giving people practical tools and using that case study as a basis that we talked about earlier.
The theater, the role play.
It will be, but without being an agile theater, hopefully.
Okay.
Yes. A theater that you're going to enjoy really putting on that production,
Yeah, and take part in. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Cool. So I loved our conversation, and it seems like it's 40 minutes, and I would go on and on, but we have to draw a line somewhere. So I hope to talk to you again. But before we go, could you tell us where the viewers can find you and learn more about you?
Oh, absolutely. So if you'd like to get hold of me, get hold of me on LinkedIn. And that's the best way to get hold of me. Just message me. And yeah, I'm usually quite good at responding. But if I'm not,
Okay.
forgive me.
No, yeah, we all have this a bit of like saturation, right, of
Oh,
notifications, and so everybody have to forgive if you don't respond in 24 hours.
yeah, absolutely.
That's normal. Okay, and about your podcast? What about your
Oh, thanks.
podcast?
Thanks for asking about that, Maria. You have to come on ours. Consider this an open notification. I can't wait to introduce you to Sharon. I know you're going to hit it off, but it's a podcast that we basically take part in that wider debate, just like you do, around
Mhm.
collaboration, leadership, delivery. And there's a good mixture because in our delivery space, like there's so many principles, there's so many things that and positions and themes that we're always engaging with. So we try and provide real life experiences from people like you and me who are working with
Mhm.
organizations and delivering every single day.
Great. Awesome. So I will add links below so everybody can see and
Thank you.
contact you. Thank you so much. It has been a blast. I love it that we finally managed to
Yeah.
do it together. And yeah, have a great day and see you around.
Thank you, Maria. It's been a pleasure.